Love and longing. Noir hummed to herself as she waited for the self-important young woman to actually look up from her typing. It was a fair assumption that someone that walked in at seemingly random and said nothing had no appointment, but it was generally a good idea to at least look. "So are you going to say, 'Oh my goddess, princess, I'm so sorry,'" Hallie Judd exclaims as she finally looks up from her work. My apologies. How can I be of service?" "Does your mistress have some time to speak? There's a bit of an issue that is better dealt with legally rather than martially," Noir asks. A moment please, milady," Hallie Judd says, and she starts typing away at her screen again, this time making sure to angle herself so she can see Noir. She's having a meal at Galactic Fine Dining Local Branch, owned by HFY. It's in the northeastern half of the city with a riverside view on Angle and 50th. She will be there for the next 45 minutes with her sister. She is at rooftop table 15, which is on the roof. "Ah, so the rooftop table is on the roof. I never would have guessed. Thank you for your time, madam." Noir notes even as a bit of axiom infuses her eyes. She can see and hear that Hallie Judd is typing away a report to someone about her presence here. But as there's nothing in the address bar, there's no way of knowing whether it's to her duchess or another mistress. She leaves the room after a slight curtsy to the hard-working and likely treacherous young woman and finds her way out of the building shortly. However, the politicking and endless game of sneers, doublespeak, and knives isn't Noir's field and hopefully never will be. She'll need a lifetime of responsibility for others, such as her daughters and whatever daughters they have, before she's confident in the ability to lead on such a scale. Besides, this is the time of her life to build beautiful small things and get them exactly right. Before she even thought of going for a ladyship beyond a battle princess, she wanted to be the best battle princess, mother and wife she could be. Once she had all that down to instinct, maybe a barony. Maybe. She does wonder who that report was going out to. But in the end, what does it matter? Those blinded by the luster of gilding and silk find themselves in company of those who are equally blinded and foolish. They may have pretty keeps and prettier words to match their pretty titles, but gold holds a poor edge and deforms with ease, much like the will of many nobles. She quickly finds her way to a reinforced landing and launch pad duo and waits a few moments as a particularly large and muscle-bound Apuk woman with an enormous courier bag lands on the receiving pad. "Excuse me," the woman says before continuing on her delivery. Noir then checks the sky and, seeing no one on approach, crosses the landing pad and steps onto the launch pad. She then checks the markings at the edge and the address of the nearest landing pad in each direction. She notices that Angle Street is one such part of an address and nods to herself. It has a calculation just below it, and she follows it to launch herself at the right angle and strength. The city blurs below her and the wind pulls at her hair and gown as she soars through the air. She reaches the peak of her jump and begins a rapid descent towards the proper landing pad. Unfortunately, she can see what seems to be a younger Apuk woman lingering after her landing on the pad. "Excuse me," Noir tries to call, and her voice is snatched by the wind. Unfortunate. At least it would be if she wasn't very skilled in the calling and use of warfire. She could create a jet-like force to lift her up, but the silly girl down below is likely unable to properly resist that level of heat. So instead, Noir blows a lungful of green flame into her hands and shapes it into a solid state and turns it into a bar she swings off of to redirect her momentum and angle herself again. She spins a few times and her dress puffs out. Axiom reinforces her clothing and she drifts down lightly and delicately like a leaf on the wind, to land right beside the young woman buried in her communicator. "Oh my goodness!" The young Apuk jumps and Noir gently takes her by the collar and leads her off the landing pad. "Please get off the landing targets as soon as you can. You don't want to end up stomped on by a larger lady. Mironoir notes, and almost prophetically, the larger Apuk woman from earlier slams into the landing point. "Your pardon, please," the courier says before jogging away. "Sorry," the younger girl says as she watches the courier leave. Getting stomped is always something that happens to someone else. It's always something that happens to a friend of a friend or a cousin's acquaintance until it happens to you. Do be careful, young lady." Mironoir notes before pausing. "By the by, which way is 50th Street? I think that way," the young lady says, pointing to the left, and Mironoir nods in appreciation. "Thank you. Have a lovely day." She bids the younger woman and gets moving. 10 minutes later, she's forced to double back as it turns out that the young woman thought wrong and sent her in the exact opposite direction. Galactic Fine Dining isn't actually a restaurant chain. Well, it technically is, but it isn't. It's more of an investment firm for restaurants with strict quality control. You must have a large amount of quality seating, a high-quality menu to the local tastes, and a secondary exotic menu that is healthy for the local inhabitants but uses no local ingredients. Couple that with a high ratio of male staff employed as valets or musicians, and it was generally regarded as a very good, albeit expensive, choice. The dark red and polished brass interior was filled with delicate music pleasing to the Apuk ear as Mironoir walks in the front entrance. "Good afternoon, madam. Do you have a reservation?" The absolutely adorable young man at the entrance asks her. Mironoir briefly has a flashback to when she was the Matchless. She had actually inquired of more than one employee of another galactic fine dining establishment as to their marital status. Thankfully, they were all already taken, and she had moved on to eventually find her Vernon. "No, I am Princess Mironoir. I am told that the local Duchess is here. Table 15 on the roof, if I am not mistaken." A moment, please, madam," the receptionist says, and quickly taps at a data slate incorporated into his podium. "You are correct. Mern Quen and Duchess Mir Quen are here. Do you require an escort?" "I am unfamiliar with this building, so it would be appreciated," Mironoir says, and he nods before stepping out from behind the podium. "This way, please, madam," he says, and leads her to the right and then into a doorway that has sunlight pouring through it. It's an active portal that cuts out the need of stairs, and she's now on the roof and being led around several tables. "Duchess Mir Quen, a battle princess to see you, my lady," the young man says, bowing to the dark-haired Apuk, and Mironoir raises an eyebrow. "Shall I fetch you a seat, madam?" "No, I do not think my business will take so long that I will grow tired," Mironoir says simply, and the receptionist walks away. "Duchess Mir Quen and sister." "I am. What is one of the Empress thugs doing here?" Mir Quen asks. "Thug am I? Oh, let's not split hairs. You girls are raised from the common rabble for your skill in the arts of arson and assault. Those are crimes, you know." Mir Quen taunts her as Mir Quen looks from her sister to Mironoir and is clearly uncomfortable. And in case you've forgotten, nobility came originally from martial strength, which means that your illustrious bloodline started from some woman like me. But I'm not here for that, Mironoir states. "And what are you here for, honorable battle princess?" Mir Quen asks, and Mironoir smiles. "I'd rather not bother the Empress with this, but my husband and I are attempting to stop the madness of the Barlees and Harkul clan. Their latest bit of stupidity happened in the next duchy, however their home is in yours." "And what do you want of me?" Mir Quen asks. "I want to separate them, preferably with most of Serbo between them. To that end, I need them exiled from these lands." "You are asking me to exile loyal citizens?" "I'm asking you to exile career criminals. Wouldn't separating these families, what were they called? The Barless and Harkul, wouldn't banishing them and separating them merely make the problems of today the problems of tomorrow, at best?" Mir Quen asks curiously. The problem between these families is that they're too close to each other. They're both proud, vengeful, aggressive, and opportunistic, which means that so long as the wounds are fresh, the fighting will never stop. By letting time heal these wounds and giving these women time to calm down and think, the damage should, if not fade entirely, then, at the very least, slow down to a much more manageable level of one or two troublemakers rather than two bloodthirsty armies willing to wage war at the slightest excuse. I beg your pardon, Honorable Princess, but what difference does, excuse me, could you bring my guest a chair, please? Would you care for anything? A drink, perhaps? Oh, no, thank you. I've just had a homemade meal courtesy of my husband's efforts. There is no flavor so savory as a liberal dose of love. Miro Noir gushes even as a chair is rushed up. Thank you. She sits down in the comfortable stained wood, brass, and felt chair they've brought her and folds her hands into her lap with a smile. She is the very image of demure elegance. Now, what difference does it make to separate these women? How dangerous are they actually? If this is a pair of criminal families trying to mutually destroy each other, then surely a problem like this solves itself. Messily, yes, but it does solve itself, doesn't it? Mirquen asks. An excellent point, sister. Surely this is something best left to the local police officers. Or are they incapable of actually dealing with a violent rabble? Mirquen asks. They are, however. The laws that empower them to deal with these criminals stop them from permanently ending this. How so? Mass murder perpetuated for generations is easily enough to earn an execution, Mirquen asks. They're good at this. They know the laws and loopholes. They know how to either hide or destroy bodies so it can't be properly proven that they've murdered. Without solid proof and with lawyers, they can get out of prison fairly swiftly. Again, I fail to see what kind of problem this is. If they're only attacking each other and the police round them up on the regular, then what kind of threat are they? Mirquen asks in a dismissive tone. The young boys of both families are now sorcerers in training, Miro Noir says, and both women grow quiet. Are they? Yes. Is this related to that strange report about children being adopted by the Dark Forest? Mirquen asks, and Miro Noir nods. Yes, it is. The Barlis and Harcool are those families. I thought it some absurd joke and put it from my mind, Mirquen notes. There truly is a small army of children being reared in the Dark Forest. Yes, my fellow battle princesses have been helping see to their education. There has, however, been a further development, one which has made it all the more important to stop the families from fighting, which is, my husband has intercepted the families and stopped them from fighting. The way he did so was apparently so frightening that the Dark Forest itself paid deeper attention than normal, and this allowed the young sorcerers of each family to see glimpses of what he was doing. The children are in a panic, and if the families attack each other again, it may very well take another equally terrifying display to scare them away from killing each other again. And letting them just kill each other is no option, Mirquen notes. Because now that there are sorcerers in the upcoming generation, this war is going to have absurd collateral. Yes, that is the main concern. It's why the Dark Forest and its sorcerers have intervened. They don't want to see their youngest brothers be dragged into a cycle where they end up both being forced to murder their families. But they're rival families. Rival families that have blended together. They used to be your fellows. The Barlis and Harkle were. That's why the name is familiar. They're disgraced nobles. Their coup attempts led to our ancestresses having the perfect opportunity to seize the duchy. Yes, they used to be the officers and commanders of the local armies. They've lost almost everything, but are still bloodthirsty. Although, after what my husband did, what did he do? He used Holy Scripture as inspiration and brought divine wrath upon them. This included a river of blood. He what? He swept them up in a river of blood, after 8 other brutal curses. So it is true. Battle princesses marry sorcerers. I'd been told that it happens, but I have so little business with either princess or sorcerer that I've never seen it. Mirren notes. What's his title? Some called him the Shellbreaker or the Romantic, but I expect he'll get another nickname soon. Shellbreaker? Wait, the human sorcerer? The one that grew a tree in the middle of the Shellbreaker. Wait, the name of the princess that he was married to was me. Miro Noir notes smugly. Excuse me. Waiter, could we have some more wine at this table, please? I don't much care what year, just get it here quickly. Mir Quen calls out with her hand up.